a luxurious hotel room on Victoria Island, the scent of expensive cologne mixed with betrayal, and then a blood-curdling scream pierces the night. "Please! I beg you! What are you?" Tony's voice, trembling with terror as he faces something not of this world. "Our ancestors have always warned us that some consequences cannot be measured in naira and kobo. Some debts are paid with more than money. Some sins attract punishments that follow you beyond this life into the next. What if I told you the next woman you plan to cheat with could be your last? That the arms you seek comfort in could be the very ones that drag you into a pit of endless suffering? In the bustling city of Lagos, where dreams rise with the morning sun and sins hide in the shadows of night, there lived a man named Tony, a banker by day, a betrayer by night. But Tony did not know that in our motherland, Africa, the spirits watch and they judge. This true story from the heart of Nigeria reveals what happens when a man forgets his roots, abandons his values, and trades his family's love for temporary pleasure with a runs girl, only to discover too late that not all beautiful women are what they appear to be. Some are messengers, some are warnings, and some are demons wearing human skin. Before we dive deeper into this shocking tale that has spread from Lagos to Abuja, from Accra to New York, make sure you've subscribed and hit that notification bell. Trust me, my people, this is one African story your ancestors would want you to hear. A lesson wrapped in terror that might just save your marriage or your life. Let me take you back to where it all began. Before the darkness that now shrouds Tony's life, there was light, bright as the Nigerian sun. 10 seasons of harvest ago, in a small church in Surulere, Tony and Betty joined hands before God and their community. Their eyes gleamed with hope, their hearts beat with the rhythm of true love. In those days, my people, Tony's smile could light up the darkest room in Lagos. They started with nothing but dreams and the blessings of their elders. A small one-room apartment in Ikeja became their palace. When night fell, they would sit under the stars on their tiny balcony, planning their empire together. "We will build something great," Tony would whisper to Betty. "Our children will never know hunger." But the ancestors were testing their bond. 6 moons after their wedding, Tony lost his job at the small finance company. Day after day, he would leave at dawn, certificate in hand, returning at dusk with nothing but rejection in his eyes. The economy of our land was harsh, unforgiving like the harmattan winds. This is when Betty showed the strength that only an African woman possesses. From the small wooden kiosk she rented, her provision store began to feed their household. Her hands, once soft, grew calloused from counting coins and carrying cartons of goods. Yet never once did she complain or throw Tony's joblessness in his face. "A woman who stands by her man during drought will feast during harvest," the elders say. And Betty embodied this wisdom. Together they welcomed 2 beautiful daughters, their cries bringing joy to their humble home. When Tony would fall into despair, Betty would place these children in his arms and say, "Look at what we have created together. This is wealth that money cannot buy." For 10 years, this was their story, a tale of love conquering hardship. Tony, the faithful husband, Betty, the supportive wife. Their love, a lesson for young couples in our community. But my people, remember this. Sometimes the devil waits until your cup is full before he tips it over. As our elders say, the same rain that grows the yam can also rot it if it falls too heavily. The winds of change were about to blow through Tony and Betty's humble home. carrying both blessings and curses on their wings. One faithful day, a wealthy woman entered Betty's provision store. Mama Favor, they called her, a respected figure who controlled many businesses across Lagos. As Betty carefully counted out her change, she summoned the courage our mothers taught us. With eyes lowered in respect, but voice steady with dignity, Betty spoke of her husband's qualifications, his dreams, his years of rejection. "Bring his papers tomorrow," Mama Favor said. "My brother sits on the board of Unity Bank." When Tony received the call for an interview, their small apartment erupted with joy. The ancestors seemed to be smiling upon them at last. 2 weeks later, he wore his only suit, carefully ironed by Betty's loving hands, and returned home with news that changed their stars. "Assistant branch manager," he announced, his voice trembling. That night, they sacrificed their last savings for a small celebration. Palm wine flowed as neighbors came to share in their good fortune. "From dust to glory," they toasted. "From provision store to banking hall." But my people, listen carefully now. Success tests the heart more severely than failure ever could. The first month, Tony brought home flowers. The second month, a new television. By the third month, something else entered their home. Something invisible yet powerful. Pride, the deadly shadow that walks beside many successful men in our land. His voice, once soft when addressing Betty, grew sharp like a machete. "This food has too much salt," he would bark. "Is this how bankers' wives cook?" The suit that Betty once ironed now carried the scent of foreign perfumes, not hers. Then came the late nights. "Banking meetings," he called them. The daughters waited by the window for a father who returned only after they had fallen asleep. Betty would wake to the sound of his key in the door at ungodly hours, the stench of alcohol following him to their marriage bed. One evening, as Betty washed his clothes, her fingers froze upon a strange discovery in his pocket. A small square packet, a condom, the kind he never used with her since their family was complete. Our ancestors warn, when a snake sheds its old skin, it does not become a lizard. It becomes a more dangerous snake. The Tony that Betty had nursed through poverty was dead. In his place stood a stranger, wearing her husband's face. Money changes a man faster than palm wine changes the mind. With each passing day, Tony strutted through the streets of Lagos like a peacock, his banking credentials hanging around his neck like a golden chain. The man who once begged for Betty's forgiveness if dinner was late now, threw plates against the wall if the soup was not to his liking. "Do you know who I am now?" became his favorite words. At Cubana nightclub, at Quilox, at the exclusive lounges where Nigeria's new money flowed like water, Tony was becoming a regular. Banking colleagues patted his back, introduced him to the shadows that walked in female form, the ASHAWOs of high society who traded their bodies for Naira bundles and iPhone gifts. The first time he tasted forbidden fruit was after a promotion celebration, a light-skinned beauty named Sophia, whose laughter sounded like money-changing hands. Just tonight, he promised himself, but lies told to oneself are the most dangerous kind. One night became two became many. The demon of infidelity, once invited, refuses to leave without destroying everything in its path. At home, Betty's heart broke piece by piece. More condom packs in his pockets, strange lipstick on his shirts, the smell of foreign bodies on his skin. Their daughters asked, "Why does Daddy never read us stories anymore?" What could she tell them? That their father was reading different stories in other women's beds? One night, gathering courage like our foremothers before battle, Betty confronted him. Tony, what has happened to you? What of our vows before God and our ancestors? His response was swift and cruel, the back of his hand against her cheek, the sound echoing in their once happy home. You forget yourself, woman. I am the man. I do as I please. Their neighbors heard her cries that night and many nights after, yet none dared interfere. The lion that enters the home must be allowed to roar, they whispered, repeating old sayings that protected evil men. Betty's tears watered the ground, just as her sweat had once fed their family. But Tony's heart had hardened like sun-baked clay. His wallet fat, his conscience thin, he explored Lagos's darkest pleasures without restraint or remorse. Have you ever witnessed someone change completely after achieving success? Have you seen how money can turn a loving husband into a monster wearing familiar skin? Remember this as our tale continues, for the spirits of our land watch everything, and justice comes in forms we cannot imagine. In the digital wilderness of Lagos, where sins hide behind screens and temptation lurks with every scroll, Tony's fingers danced across his expensive phone. The banking hours were long finished, but his hunt had just begun. On a website where men with heavy pockets seek women with light morals, a new face appeared that stopped his thumb mid-swipe. Tracy, her profile claimed, 25 years old. New to Lagos, her pictures showed curves that defied nature, eyes that promised pleasure beyond imagination, and a smile that whispered dark secrets. What drew Tony to her was not just her beauty, but something he could not name, a pull like the moon draws the ocean tide. Tonight, Sheraton Hotel, room 501, he typed, adding an amount that would make most ASHAWOs run to him like children to candy. Her response came swift. I'll be waiting. That evening, Tony told Betty another lie about bank meetings. His cologne was expensive, imported from Dubai, his wallet fat with naira. The hotel lobby gleamed with marble imported from Italy, but Tony's eyes searched only for room 501. When Tracy opened the door, even Tony, a man who had sampled many forbidden fruits, gasped. In person, she was more beautiful than her pictures suggested. Her skin glowed like polished ebony. Her walk was liquid grace. But had Tony looked closer, he might have noticed how her eyes never blinked, how her smile revealed teeth slightly too sharp. You are more handsome than your profile showed, Tracy purred, her accent strange. Not from any Nigerian tribe Tony knew. Wine flowed, clothes fell, and soon Tony was lost in pleasures he would later wish he had never tasted. Afterward, sleep claimed him quickly, the deep slumber of a man who believes the world exists only for his satisfaction. It was the cold that woke him first. A chill not from the air conditioner, but from something ancient and terrible filling the room. Through half-opened eyes, Tony saw Tracy standing at the foot of the bed, her back to him. But something was wrong, terribly wrong. Her skin rippled like water disturbed by stones. Her shadow on the wall was not a woman's shape, but something long, coiled, and monstrous. "Tracy," Tony whispered, sleep fleeing from his mind. When she turned, Tony's scream caught in his throat. Tracy's beautiful face remained, but below her neck, human skin gave way to gleaming scales. Where legs should be, a massive serpent's body coiled on the hotel carpet. Her eyes, now vertical slits glowing yellow in the dark, fixed on him with ancient hunger. "You are not the first man to betray a good woman," Tracy hissed, her voice now layered with many others, old voices, angry voices. "But you will serve as a warning to others." Tony scrambled backward against the headboard, prayers to God mixing with pleas to ancestors long forgotten. "Please! I have children! I'll change! I swear by anything! Tracy's serpent body rose higher, her human arms spreading wide like a terrible goddess of vengeance. Too late for promises, Tony of Lagos. Some lessons must be written in blood and bone. Her strike was faster than lightning, her fangs sinking deep where no medicine could reach. The screams that erupted from room 501 that night shattered the hotel's peaceful facade. Security guards rushed through corridors, master key in hand, hearts pounding with each step. When they finally burst through the door, the sight before them would haunt their dreams for years to come. Tony lay twisted on the bed, his body contorted in unnatural angles, foam bubbling from his lips. Of Tracy there was no sign, only the lingering scent of something ancient and reptilian. The room temperature had dropped so low that the guard's breath formed clouds in the air, yet no air conditioner hummed. "Snake! Snake!" Tony kept screaming, though the guards found no serpent in the room. "Her eyes, her body, please help me." At Lagos University Teaching Hospital, doctors gathered around his bed like vultures circling fallen prey. MRI machines hummed, specialists were called, tests were run. Their verdict fell like a hammer on Tony's world: complete paralysis from the waist down, permanent and irreversible. The doctors spoke of strange venom patterns they'd never encountered, of nerve damage that followed no known medical logic. The toxicology reports showed compounds unknown to modern science. One old nurse, who had trained in the villages before coming to Lagos, whispered, "This is not medical. This is spiritual." Soon, the bank caught wind of the scandal. Their rising star found in a hotel room, not at the business meeting claimed on his expense reports. The termination letter arrived while Tony still lay in the hospital bed, corporate words thinly veiling their disgust. "Conduct unbecoming of our institution's values." The man who once strode through banking halls with arrogance was wheeled back to the same humble apartment he had once been ashamed of. His designer suits hung like ghosts in the closet. His expensive watch was sold to pay medical bills. The wheelchair, his new throne, barely fit through their narrow doorways. But the true prison was not physical. Behind Tony's eyes now lived constant terror. Every shadow in the corner became Tracy's coiled form. Every rustle of curtains in the night breeze became her approach. He would wake screaming, his useless legs kicking at phantoms only he could see. The mighty Tony, who had mocked poverty and faithfulness, now depended on Betty to bathe him, feed him, clean him when his body betrayed his dignity. The hands he had struck in anger now lifted him gently from bed to chair each morning. The woman whose love he had discarded now became his only lifeline in a world that had suddenly grown teeth and claws. Beneath the weight of his new reality, Tony's spirit crumbled like termite-eaten wood. Nights once spent in pleasure now passed in bitter tears. The man who had everything now had only regret as his companion. One evening, as rain pounded the zinc roof of their home, the same rain that once leaked through when they were poor but happy, Tony called Betty to his side. His voice, now stripped of all arrogance, trembled with the weight of truth. "I was a fool who traded gold for dust," he whispered. "The curse that found me was one I invited with my own hands. You deserve freedom, not chains to a broken man." He pushed toward her the papers he had struggled to write with shaking hands, divorce documents that would release her from the prison of his mistakes. "Take the children and find happiness. I destroyed what we built, but you should not carry my punishment." The silence that followed was heavy with the ghosts of their past. Betty stood like a baobab tree, strong, rooted in the wisdom of generations. Her provision store had grown into 3 shops now. Men with clean hearts sought her attention. The path to a new life lay open before her. Yet Betty remembered the man who had once carried water for her when she was pregnant, the hands that had braided their daughter's hair with clumsy love, the husband who had stayed faithful through years of poverty. "The test of true love," she said, words flowing like ancient proverbs, "is not how it dances in sunshine, but how it endures storms." She tore the papers before his eyes. "Our daughters need their father, and you need to remember who you were before money poisoned your heart." In that moment, something broken began to heal. Not Tony's legs. Those would never walk again. But his spirit, which had crawled even lower than his paralyzed body, found a path toward redemption. Their home, once filled with shouting, now echoed with Tony's stories to his daughters. Tales of consequences, of spirits who guard marriage vows, of the treasure he had almost thrown away forever. In African tradition, our stories are not merely entertainment, but vessels of wisdom passed from generation to generation. This tale of Tony and Tracy speaks to the ancient belief that spiritual forces maintain the balance of justice when human hearts fail. Our ancestors understood that the spiritual and physical worlds are not separate, but intertwined like the roots of the Iroko tree. The serpent woman, Mami Wata, night runner, shapeshifter, these beings appear in tales across our continent, from the Yoruba traditions to the Igbo folk tales to the whispers of the Zulu elders. They remind us that betrayal carries consequences beyond what courts or men can impose. The venom that paralyzed Tony was not just poison in his veins, but the manifestation of the poison he had injected into his marriage. Yet this tale carries a second lesson equally powerful. True forgiveness is the strongest magic humans possess. Betty's decision to remain with Tony despite his betrayal demonstrates the redemptive power that our grandmothers spoke of when they gathered children around evening fires. In a world quick to discard broken things, Betty chose the harder path of restoration. The paralysis that bound Tony to a wheelchair also freed him from the prison of greed and lust that had captured his spirit. Sometimes we must lose everything to remember what truly matters. His legs could no longer carry him to places of sin, but his heart could still journey back to love. What would you do if you were Betty? Would you find the strength to forgive such betrayal? Or if you were Tony, what lesson would you carry forward from this experience into your next life? The choices we make echo through generations. This is the wisdom our ancestors left for us in stories such as these. If this story touched your spirit, subscribe now for more African folk tales that will change how you see the world. Our stories carry medicine for modern wounds. Let me know in the comments which character you sympathized with most. The betrayed wife whose love transcended pain, or the fallen husband who found redemption in his darkest hour. Remember, my people, the eyes that watch us are not always human, and the judgment that finds us is not always of this world.